Happy Pride Month! Hey everyone, welcome to Prince of the Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we are here with my blind reaction to Gaming in Color, the first part of our 2025 Pride special. I'm so happy to be here. Had to rock out with the tank top here, of course. Had to let my hair down a little because it is Pride Month. We are here for an excellent time, and we're gonna get into some pretty gay shit. We're starting off with a sort of like documentary movie that came out in 2014, I believe it was. This is called Gaming in Color, and it is about the queer experience within the space of gaming. Now, for those who don't know, for those who might be new to the channel, hi, my name is Connie Royal. I am a 33-year-old non-binary trans woman. I am also pansexual. I am, in other words, very gay. I am extremely queer, and growing up, there was a majority of my life where I just didn't know this. But also at the same time, I knew it. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's like, you don't actually, like, realize something, but when you look back on it in hindsight, everything is like, oh yeah, I understood. I knew it without knowing it. It's like it was always there, it was always a part of me. I always kind of even felt this way. It's just I didn't know how to acknowledge those feelings, especially with how I was raised and whatnot. So I didn't end up coming out until I was well into adulthood. And I mean, I feel like a lot of people who don't come out until adulthood, I really do wish I could go back and have come out a lot sooner. But it is what it is. And one of the earliest factors for me kind of like coming to eventually realize that I was not, male in any way, shape, or form, was the fact that Pokemon Crystal came out. Like, hear me out. So, in the Pokemon video games, Crystal is part of the second generation. It is the third game in the generation after Gold and Silver, following in the same pattern that Pokemon Yellow had with Generation 1. Pokemon Crystal is the first game in the series that allows you to play as a female character. Something that would become, like, just part of the series from that point forward. It's the first game where you could actually choose your gender. And the instant I, booted it up the first time I played it and saw that, I instantly knew I had to pick the female character. And I didn't necessarily know why, and I didn't even question it. It's just something that I knew I had to do. And in the years after, and with even future games, I always kind of when people asked me, I always made this excuse that was a complete fabrication. I don't know where it came from. It was a complete lie. I made this excuse that the female trainer plays differently. Like, it actually affects how you level up and stuff. And again, I have no idea where I got that. It was a complete lie, and it didn't even make sense. But I used that excuse because I was raised in a way to where I was afraid of being bullied if I did admit to this kind of stuff. To playing as a female character, or being into other more feminine stuff like Barbies and Sailor Moon and stuff, which I was also into as a kid. But I always made that excuse. But as it went along, I almost always chose the female character in Pokemon games. It was just something that I always did. And so I continued to do so as the years went on. As I started playing other games that had either character creators or like let you choose between a male and a female character, I once again started always choosing the female character. This wasn't really, again, something I thought about. It just was something I chose to do. And I mean, I guess I can't say always. It wasn't every single time. There are exceptions here and there. But for the pretty vast majority of the time, I chose to play as a female character. And the reasoning for this, like I said, I didn't know at the time, but now I realize is because I was identifying more with that. When I created characters in Character Creator, it's like I was trying to make like the prettiest, most like aesthetically pleasing. I am slow down. I'm starting to stumble over my words. The most aesthetically pleasing girl character I could, because I wanted to be that. And again, at the time I didn't realize this. It's not something that I even could consider. And it really just continued to be a thing. To the point where now, currently, it's like I pretty much never play as a male character unless the game forces you to. Like, the only time I ever play as a male character is when it's literally like you're playing as a specific character in a game. If I have the choice, I'm always going to play as female, or in some rare games, if I can, non-binary, such as Baldur's Gate 3. My main character I did for the Let's Play of that was non-binary. And by the way, I do have a gaming channel. It's called Princess of Gay Ming, a little hyphen between gay and Ming, because I'm a basic bitch. But that has like Baldur's Gate and everything else on it. Though I think I started Baldur's Gate on this channel, but I moved like most of it over to the other one. But it's like, yeah, when given a chance, a lot of games nowadays will also allow you to play non-binary characters, and I do enjoy doing that. So, yeah, the point is that gaming has kind of been intrinsically linked to me eventually coming to realize who I am. And it's become like obviously just a huge part of my life. I love gaming. I have a secondary gaming channel as well. And it's a lot of it is because of Pokemon Crystal specifically. So that really, in a lot of ways, revolutionized my life. And I'm very curious to see like what other kind of stories like that will be in this documentary. I know nothing about this film. It's not like a long film. It's like an hour long. But I don't know like what to expect from it in terms of the general, like, I guess, study or whatever it's going to be focusing on. Or like just story it's going to be telling with this. I'm very curious to see like who ends up being in this. If there's going to be anyone I recognize, it's possible, but I don't know how likely it is. But yeah, I'm very interested to check this out more, or to check this out at all, and to learn more stories and see if any of them even like to some degree correlate to mine. But yeah, this, like I said, is our first video of Pride Month. We're going to have videos throughout the month, so stay tuned for more of those. But for the time being, let's just get into this and see what we have in store. Hold up just a sec. Before you click that link down in the description below to get to today's video, I want to remind you of all the awesome content we have both on this channel and the Princess of Gaming channel. Let's check it out. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I wanted to look it up because I had not heard of GamerX before as a organization or as a convention. Because back when this was like happening, 2013, 2014, I was still like kind of new to everything. Like it was still, I was just only starting to like vaguely come out at that time. I didn't even come out as trans until 2017. But yeah, it's like I wanted to look this up to see the history of this, and apparently, um, Matt Cohn, who was in this, the creator of GamerX, apparently in 2018, he was accused of labor rights violations, and he hadn't been affiliated with GamerX because for like a year because the organization split from Midboss, which was the organization that put out this documentary. Um, and he was the head of Midboss. So GamerX ended up cutting all ties with Midboss and Matt, and yeah, it just completely separated. And it looks like things started to kind of die in terms of their conventions and stuff. There was supposed to be like a GamerX East in 2019, but it ended up getting canceled. Um, the first one was in August of 2013. There was a second one in July of 2014. Uh, it ended up being changed from GamerX to GX Dev Everyone Creates, and so in January of 2015, there was another one then. GX3 Everyone Games was in December of 2015 in San Jose. In 2016, there was GamerX Year 4 in Santa Clara, California. That was September 30th to October 2nd. GamerX East was started in November 2017, actually the same month I came out as trans. And that was actually going to be in New York City. And then GamerX East 2019, or that was in New York City. And I guess there was no 2018 one, but there was supposed to be one in April of 2019, and that was the canceled one. Um, so it seems like things just kind of like died down, and back in 2023, like they stopped even like posting on Twitter and stuff. Um, it seems like the company, the corporation, just didn't really survive, like especially past the pandemic, very well. Um, it looks like they have a YouTube channel as well, but the most recent video for that was 7 years ago, so they haven't even, and that was from like GamerX East 2017. Um, so it looks like the convention just ended up dying out due to like the slight controversies and everything, and obviously COVID definitely didn't help. And yeah, it's just it seems to like there were problems that come from this. And with this, with this like documentary being made by Mid Boss and like directly like involving GamerX and everything, there is sort of that little disappointment in there. But the stuff that is said in this documentary still rings true. The aspects of like how queer culture and gaming culture have oftentimes been separated and oftentimes almost not entirely but almost been at odds for each other. I'm lucky to have like kind of grown up in areas where mostly that hasn't been too much of an issue, and especially nowadays, like after coming out as queer, um in every like way that I have, it's luckily been I've luckily been around mostly people who have been very accepting. There's definitely been some exceptions. There's been friends I've lost since coming out, but especially in the convention and geek space, it's been like that's been super like affirming and welcoming and accepting. I've had no issues with any conventions around me. I've had no issues with just like gaming culture and anime culture and whatnot. All of that's been fine. like even on YouTube, a lot of you there's a lot of people who were like viewers of mine prior to me coming out. Back when I had my old channels and everything. A lot of you there was a lot of you who were like fans of me from back then or were viewing me back then and stayed on when I, came out publicly on the channel. And I have always wondered if like the sudden out of nowhere like takedown of my channels and my old account um back in February of 2018 might have, I'm wondering if like someone had like reported videos and shit to like try to attack me because of what happened. But I can't say with any certainty, and I don't want to just assume because like that was only a few months after I came out, and I made it public on the channel and everything after I came out, and so I do kind of wonder if like there was a correlation there. But it's it's something that like for the most part I've luckily always like had good luck on for the most part. Again, there's some people like some friends and stuff and family who haven't been the best about it, but I've luckily had a great support network, and not everyone has that, uh, gamer or otherwise. And thankfully, like there's a lot of games out nowadays since this documentary was like released in 2014. In the decades since, there's been a lot more games that have like embraced queerness and a lot of big name ones too. Like I said, Baldur's Gate 3 was a game of the year winner. It was a big deal. It was super critically acclaimed. And you could play as you could make your character non-binary. And no matter what your character's gender, you could also have them romance any of the main companions, any of the origin companions. Does not matter. And if you play as an origin companion, you can have that companion, or well, who is at that point your player character, but you can have them romance any of the others. It's basically everyone is pansexual. And it's great. It's fantastic that way. Um, and again, it won Game of the Year. And in terms of indie games, there's the likes of Celeste, which is incredibly well received and is literally a game with a trans female main character with Madeline, who, and the entire story of the game is basically about, like, the trans experience and all the struggles and mental issues and um, mental health problems and stuff that can come from that. Like the themes of that game are very strong and very abundantly clear. It does not hide it. And again, like games like Detroit Become Human obviously wear their themes on their sleeves. But like you see like queer representation in that. And so on and so forth. So many so many games have become better at that. And there's still games with like, straight characters and couples and romances and whatnot. And that's fine. There's always going to be, and there should be. There absolutely still should be. But there should also be plenty of representation for, queer people as well. We should have both representation for queer people and representation for straight cis people. It's just we need to keep pushing the envelope on how much there is and what kind of representation there is. Because there's been representation in the past for queer people that hasn't been great. And this is not just, again, games, this is any piece of media. There's been some very stereotyped representation that ends up being more insulting and offending than anything else. And it's just, some of it is a product of the time, some of it you have to, like, understand they might not have, like, fully grasped things at the time. but in some cases they were at least trying and genuinely trying. Like, for example, there's a movie called Tu Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. That is the name of the movie. It is a long title. You could just say Tu Wong Fu. It's shorter. But that movie, um, like, focuses on three trans women um, through the eyes of drag. And there's some terminology and aspects of it that are less than great, that have definitely not aged well. But the movie came out, I think, in like the late 80s, early 90s, something like that. So it makes sense. And I mean, you also had straight actors portraying the characters, which isn't usually great. But they still, like, they made a point of, like, talking about, like, even in interviews and stuff, that they wanted to make sure that they were respectful about their performances. And they, like, studied with actual drag queens and stuff, and actually learned about this all. Um, it was Patrick Swayze, Wesley Snipes, and John Leguizamo in that movie. And all of them did fantastic. Um, it's a pretty interesting movie, but if you haven't checked it out and plan to, just, again, keep aware that some things have not aged well. It just, there's some things that are just definitely a product of the times. But, like, you have a lot more games that, like, just so openly embrace queerness nowadays. The Life is Strange series is a phenomenal example of that. Um, and and I think that we're definitely on the right path. It's still not going as well and as fast and as, like, you know, just, we're not getting the quality that we want in the time we want it. But it is progress. And it's going to keep happening. Despite all of these, like, conservatives and bigots out there trying to, like, push back against this. Again, some of the most popular games of recent memory have queer characters and whatnot. And that's going to keep happening because that's where the world is moving. It's like, it feels weird to say, like, oh, it's just like we're progressing and that's how the world is going to be, and that's not really going to be fully stopped. But it's kind of true, and unless, like, some really crazy, like, horrifically evil shit happens, which, considering this current administration, I wouldn't put past them. Like, this is how things are progressing naturally. This is how people are progressing and how culture is progressing naturally. And so it's going to keep changing. If I look over here at my games, it's like there's a lot of these that you could, like, see as just male person. There's a lot of games that I play that are, either straight or more, I guess, neutral. Don't really go into relationships in that way. Um, don't really have, like, trans rep or whatnot either, and that's still, like, for the most part, the norm. But there's a lot of games that are coming out that are progressing on that are doing more. And again, big games. Like, huge games that are getting mainstream popularity. And even indie games. There's a lot, like, from the developer side of things that I don't know. And I think what they were saying in this is probably pretty true. Like, there's a lot of companies and developers out there who just don't want to be, like, the ones to push the envelope as much. They want to, like, wait for others to do it first because they're afraid of, like, the pushback they'll receive and how it could hurt their, business, let's be honest. Because these companies are all about the business, all about the money. That's what they care about most. That's just capitalism. But there's a lot of a lot of companies that are pushing things a lot more. Again, Larian is a great example of this with Baldur's Gate 3, but also with their other game, Divinity Original Sin 2, that also has, you know, the ability to have queer relationships and everything, queer romances. And again, like with the Life is Strange games, or even something as simple as like Final Fantasy VII, with like Cloud cross-dressing and stuff. It's like there's representation in places you wouldn't necessarily expect. And again, we're going to see more and more of it as we continue to progress. And hopefully we start to make even more big, like, headways sooner rather than later. Because most, like, I would still say, like, the vast majority of games are still very straight and cis. Like, trans characters are still, like, very few and far between in a lot of games. And, like, queer characters in general are more common, but, like, a lot of them are kind of relegated to RPGs where it's like, oh, you can play as, you could change your, like, created character's gender and you can have them romance any of these characters. But it's like, why not have, like, a game that's just a specific story and have that kind of thing in it? Like Last of Us 2. That proves you can do something like that because, you know, main character is Ellie and she very gay with Dina. So it's like, yeah, that kind of proves that. But also that game was, like, poorly received because people, like, are stupid. It's like, I'm not going to get into that entire conversation right now, but it's just like, the people, like, the biggest thing that people hated on was, I mean, it's not a spoiler at this point, is it? Like, because it's not just for, like, the show that just happened. It was in the game that came out years ago, so I'm going to say it's not a spoiler at this point. The biggest issue people had with that game was Joel's death, but it's like, that needed to happen for his character and for Ellie's character to progress. Like, that was actively necessary for the story. And I think some people had an issue with how he died, but that was also necessary considering his character and everything he had done. And, you know, that Joel was, you know, not a good person by any means. So yeah, it's like, that's very much the point that needed to be made there. And it's one of those cases where people, like, hated on, and Last of Us 2 actually had more queer representation than just Ellie and Dina too. There's a trans character in it, Lev, I believe was the name. So there's that. But yeah. Anyway, point is, there's a lot of people who hate on the game for dumb reasons. And the game didn't do as well as it could have because of that. Of course, these same people also were harassing the voice actors like crazy. Like, the shit that they were, like, slinging towards Laura Bailey was insane. Like, it's like, don't treat people that way, especially voice actors. Like, they're not their characters. But I'm getting off topic here. I'm just happy that games are getting a lot more inclusive with this. It's still a problem, but it is getting better. And in the convention aspect, I've always had good experiences with conventions. Mind you, I started going to conventions in about 2013. So, like, that kind of coincided with this GamerX thing. But, like, the conventions I was going to, like, were always, like, queer positive. Again, the Brony conventions, Youmacon, and maybe I'm just in a good area for that. Maybe Detroit is just a good area for that. I don't know. Maybe Maybe like I guess the San Francisco area just had issues with their conventions with that. But yeah, it's a case of like I've always found those spaces very queer friendly. And I've like met plenty of queer people at those conventions, including guests who are queer. Like industry guests and everything, like Kieran Strange, who has become a bit of a friend of mine. And he was the one who, helped me come out in 2017. He helped me like realize I was trans and helped me like find the courage to come out. And so it's like I really love that Yomakan, brought him in and everything. And like we've seen all kinds of like great great people come into the convention, and it's wonderful to see. That's the kind of the point I'm getting at. It's been a super like um accepting space for queer geeks. But I do understand that not every convention is like that. I have heard stories of conventions that have been like very bigoted and just also very fucked up. There's some really horrific convention stories. Um, I've heard of conventions that have basically been Nazi rallying points practically, and it's just like, what the fuck? Why? Of course, that's always confused me how people like who are that bad can also be into a lot of this geeky stuff that is like so actively against shit like that. It's just like, yeah, like you're playing games whose themes and ideas and characters are so aggressively against your beliefs. And it's like, how are you a fan of this shit? Like, what? It makes no sense to me. It's really fucking weird. It's the same thing with like with the idea of like Nazis and all being in the MLP fandom, because it's like being a brony and being a Nazi are like so completely against each other, because like the ideals and everything of the show and the fandom and everything it stands for go completely against that. But it's like, people will latch on to anything because there's geeks in every walk of life, and they'll latch on to something just because it's entertaining or fun to them. And there are some people who will just get into it because they want to ruin other people's fun. There are people like that. And unfortunately, the queer community has had that fun ruined a lot. This documentary was real interesting. I feel like it felt like very low budget, for lack of a better way of putting it. It felt like there wasn't a huge amount of money put into the visual representation, especially like it was basically you had them talking on screen, you had clips from a convention, which I think was just the first Gamer X, because this came out in 2014. But there was a game. The first Gamer X was in 2013, and they were advertising for the second one, so I assume that was from the first Gamer X. They had the little like whiteboard moments where it's like, oh, the text will pop up on screen and everything, maybe with a little bit of a flourish, but very simple, very easy to do. I could probably even figure out how to do that if I put time into it. And then you had the clips of the video games that they were talking about or that represented what they were talking about, and that's it. And it was a very simplistic documentary in that regard, where it's like there wasn't a lot of changes to things. There wasn't a lot of like creativity with the visuals, and it was a very straightforward documentary of them just like discussing this stuff. But it's important stuff to discuss, and they had valid like perspectives and points to make. I think it was like successful in that regard, I guess you could say. It may not have been the most entertaining thing to watch or to react to, generally speaking, but it was important, and I'm glad that I chose this as something to check out for Pride Month this year. And again, especially because of my history with video games as a queer person and how it helped me to come out in the first place. Um, how a lot of my early queerness, I guess you could say, was intrinsically linked to that, even if I didn't realize it at the time. Looking back in retrospect and everything, it's very abundantly clear, again, why I chose to play as female characters all the time. Why I connected more with the female characters tended to be my favorite characters. Like, my favorite Mario character has pretty much always been Peach, for example. And again, it's something I like would never have admitted back in the day when I was a kid and everything. But absolutely one of the reasons was I wanted to wear her dress. I just really loved her fucking dress and wanted to wear it. That was legitimately always a reason for me. And again, I would have never admitted to it because the way I was raised would basically have told me that that was wrong. But I know now that it's not, and I still kind of want to wear it. Though, like, cosplaying as Peach would be great, and I would love to do it. That's got to be expensive as hell. I don't have the money to do that. Um, Cosplaying is expensive in general, but you know, this was definitely an interesting watch. It was interesting to hear these perspectives and to see how this all went down. And to learn apparently how things didn't end up working out for this organization as well as maybe they hoped. But again, the things they were talking about in regards to queer and gaming spaces and how all of that has changed over time and whatnot is definitely still valid and definitely still worth discussing. I want to hear your thoughts in regards to this, though. In the comments below, let me know what are your thoughts in regards to um, queer and gaming spaces, how they mix and everything, and how that's been like an issue or whatnot throughout history. Let me know your thoughts on like queer characters in games and queer representation and various other things such as that. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like I said, we will have other reactions over the course of this month. I think it's going to be pretty much every Sunday from here on out. Let me check my calendar. Every like Saturday or Sunday or something like that, because like the day you're seeing this, June 1st, is a Sunday. So it might be, I might be doing it every Sunday. Yeah. I think that's my plan right now. So yeah, it's gonna be like probably a Sunday thing. Where it's gonna be like, I think there's gonna be like three more this month. I actually have a schedule thing. Let me check that. That's probably better than checking my calendar. Um, just so you know when to expect more of these. This I believe is correct. Yes. Okay. So where's the right thing? Oh Lord, hold on. This is giving me trouble. Okay. So yeah, we have this, and then there's going to be June 8th, 15th, and 22nd, which, yeah, are Sundays. These are going to be Sunday things. Obviously, these are not like the movies of the week. These are extra. These are additional. But yeah, that's going to be a thing like for each week. We're going to have this on Sundays. It just ended up being on Sundays. There's no like huge reason for it. But yeah, so for those 3 weeks, or 4 weeks, including today, 3 weeks after today. Again, the 8th, 17th, and 22nd. God, I'm bad at this. 8th, 15th, and 22nd. Yeah. There's going to be there's going to be more. So look out for more. I'm not going to reveal ahead of time what they are. You're just going to have to watch and find out. And to everyone watching, I hope you have a happy Pride Month. I hope that whether you are queer in any way, whether you're gay, straight, bi, trans, cis, the non-binary, gender fluid, gender non-conforming in any way. I hope you have a great Pride Month. And if you're a bigot, fuck off. This channel is very explicitly for queer people and for queer allies. If you are a bigot, you are just not welcome here. It's as simple as that. We are celebrating Pride this month, and yeah, hope that you are excited for more of this to come. In the meantime, thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.